A very warm welcome to Africa. Good morning. It's Friday and we are so excited. We couldn't be more happier. The weekend has arrived. We are bringing you the news making headlines across Africa. My name is Aina Raizakoyo and alongside me is Ashwin Mberi. We will be in your company from now until 8 a.m.
Absolutely. Now, speaking of the weekend, Sunday is Love Note Day. Love Note Day is a day to tell someone you love them by writing a message of love in the form of a note. Though the traditional way of doing this is in handwritten form, e-cards are another way of sending out a love message on this particular day. Remember, Love Note Day, not DM Day. Love Note. Write down with the pen and the paper. Here's a video on Love Note Day.
Welcome back to Africa. Good morning. In our top stories this morning, Algeria announces closure of airspace to Morocco. How far will the crisis between Algiers and Rabat continue? The question comes as Algeria decided to the immediate closure of its airspace to all Moroccan civilians and military aircraft and aircraft registered in Morocco. The decision comes into force on Wednesday, the 22nd of September, according to a statement by the Algerian presidency. It also comes 1 month after the announcement on the 24th of August by Algeria of the break of its diplomatic relations with Morocco, following months of heightened tension between the two rival countries in Maghreb. Algiers' decision will mostly affect Moroccan aircraft whose routes fly over Algerian territory in the immediate future. A source at Royal Air Maroc said the closure would only affect 15 flights weekly linking Morocco with Tunisia, Turkey, and Egypt.
Now in Namibia, FNB dumps clients linked to fish rot. Namibian Sun has seen letters served to some of the bank's clients, some dating back to June, titled Notice of Termination of Business Relationship. The letters state that FNB Namibia has reviewed its business relationship with the individuals and the various legal entities they are linked or associated with. The bank stated that it conducts its business in a transparent and responsible manner, and publicity and risk associated with undesirable transactional behavior does not resonate with its corporate values and principles. The letters listed accounts the individuals and their businesses have with the bank and informed them that any debit balances on any facilities / overdrafts will become due and payable immediately on expiry on the 60-day period. The affected clients also claimed that many people are listed as witnesses in the fish rot case, including FNB Namibia, questioning what the bank will do to punish itself. The bank is bound by the law to make due diligence on transactions which flag red signals, which FNB didn't seem to have done when these transactions were taking place, and has resorted to using media reports to punish us. And in this case, the clients feel they have not yet been charged or found guilty. One of those affected lamented.
In our next story, game changer, China to stop funding overseas coal projects. Chinese President Xi Jinping has said that China would no longer fund the construction of new coal-fired power projects overseas, surprising the world on the climate for the second straight year at the United Nations General Assembly. China has supported coal projects in developing countries, including Indonesia and Bangladesh, and has been under heavy diplomatic pressure to put an end to the financing to help the world meet the goals of the Paris Climate Agreement to reduce carbon emission. Xi's announcement on Tuesday followed similar moves by South Korea and Japan earlier this year. China will step up support for other developing countries in developing green and low-carbon energy and will not build new coal-fired power projects abroad, Jin said in the pre-recorded video address at the annual UN gathering. The pledge comes hours after the United States President Joe Biden announced a plan to double financial aid to poorer nations to $11.4 billion by 2024 to help those countries switch to cleaner energy and cope with global warming worsening effects.
It truly is time to go green. Now in South Kivu, ex-rebel Chance Mihonya sentenced to life for crimes against humanity. The Bukavu military court sentenced the former rebel leader Chance Mihonya to life imprisonment on charges of crimes against humanity and war crimes which were brought against him. During a public hearing in Katana, the Bukavu military court found the former rebel leader Chance Mihonya guilty. He must also pay damages to the victims in the amount of more than $300,000 US. This ex-rebel was born in 1975 in the village of Chatondo within the limits of the Kahuzi Beja National Park. He is well known in Kabare by his first name, Chance. He began his armed activities with the AFDL of Laurent Desire Kabila, the then president of the DRC. He was integrated into the Loyalist Army and then deserted in 2017. He proclaimed himself a colonel and created an armed Mai Mai group. Chance controlled 3 hills in Kahuzi Beja National Park, where he carried out criminal activities.
EU and US global vaccination rate of 70% by 2022. The European Union and the United States this Wednesday established a partnership to achieve global anti-COVID-19 vaccination rate of 70% by September 2022 at the time of next year's United Nations General Assembly. Called the EU and US Global Immunization Partnership, the initiative will help expand supply, improve coordination in delivery, and remove bottlenecks in supply chain. In a joint position released today, Ursula von der Leyen and Joe Biden underlined that vaccination is the most effective response to the pandemic, and with the United States and Europe being technological leaders in an advanced vaccination platform, taking into account decades of investments in research and development, it is vital to aggressively pursue an agenda to vaccinate the world. One of the commitments under this partnership is from the outset the sharing of vaccines with low and middle income countries, with the EU pledging to donate more than 500 million doses and the United States to provide more than 1.1 billion through the COVAX Global Access Mechanism.
Now in DR Congo, we are in Ituri, where more than 10 villages emptied of their inhabitants following rebel attacks. The inhabitants of the localities of Mafifi, Sokotano, Sesa Ofe, Idohu, Ndimo, Loya, and Membelenga abandoned their houses and activities following the abuses of the ADF rebels. Nearly 15 villages were emptied of their populations in the province of Ituri, precisely in the territory of Irumu. Only the soldiers of the armed forces of the DRC are visible in this region, reports Radio Okapi, recounting a report made by a UN mission present in Irumu since Saturday. Several signs of violence can be seen in the abandoned villages, houses as well as vehicles set on fire. The province of Ituri and that of North Kivu have been placed under a state of siege since 6 May.
Heartless dead gets 255 years in jail. A 45-year-old man has been sentenced to 255 years in jail after he was found guilty of raping his 2 biological daughters. Demezulu Nkanzamzi was initially facing 20 counts of rape, and he was found guilty on 7 counts. He appeared before Magistrate Joe Gumedze. The accused person is said to have raped his 2 underage daughters, Paige and Olivia, from 2007 until 2018. It is said that the first rape ordeal started in 2007 when he raped his daughter, who was only 8 at the time. Worth noting is the fact that the accused person's father was also arrested and sentenced for attempting to rape the accused daughters. Not only that, the accused brother also faced the same charges. This made the court believe that the accused person's homestead has normalized the evil acts. He would threaten them not to tell anyone that he was having sexual relationships with both of them. This was evident when the children would go to visit their biological mothers on holiday, where they would cry when they were supposed to go back to their father.
Truly horrific news. In the next story, we are in Botswana. Nightclubs to reopen as SOE restrictions change. Nightclubs will reopen from October 1 as other trading restrictions on businesses are lifted due to the end of the state of emergency. Investment, Trade and Industry Minister Musi Khavela has said. Parliament approved President Mokgweetsi Masisi's request for the SOE last April and subsequently extended it twice. Khavela said all businesses, including restaurants and bars, would return to their pre-pandemic operating hours, although the Shops and Restaurant Hours Act could be used to enforce any restrictions deemed necessary after the SOE ends. The removal of restrictions on businesses is expected to improve the economy, although concerns remain that increased activity in sectors such as the liquor industry could yet again drive a new wave of COVID-19 cases. COVID-19 is still here and it is still a challenge, Khavela said. The war is not over and my ministry will continue engaging with the nation to resuscitate the economy.
In our next story, South African Airways returned to the skies after 1 year of inactivity. South African Airways announced last month that it had set a date, the 23rd of September, to resume operations. True to its words, SAA will relaunch today after a year of inactivity and almost 18 months without commercial flights. The carrier will initially offer flights from Johannesburg to Cape Town, Accra, Kinshasa, Harare, Lusaka, and Maputo. SAA has not flown any commercial flights since March 2020 and ceased all cargo and repatriation flights in September last year. Tickets went on sale on the 26th of August and have sold well, according to the airline. According to interim CEO Kokolo, earlier figures indicate flights may be up to 75% full. Opening up the routes may prove to be a complication due to the ongoing traveling restriction. Kohoko added there is a profound feeling of enthusiasm within the team SAA as well as we prepare for the takeoff with the common purpose to rebuild and sustain a profitable airline that once again takes a leadership role among local, continental and international airlines.
Good news for SAA, certainly Sabawelling, the same for Namibia. All right, in our next story, we are in Angola as they are taking steps to face environmental problems. Angola has taken significant steps in creating political and strategic conditions to face environmental problems with a focus on climate change, said the Minister of Culture, Tourism and Environment, Jomo Fortunato. Speaking at the opening of the seminar on digital ecological transition and climate diplomacy organized by the embassies of the United Kingdom and Italy, the minister recalled that the executive has programmed a series of structuring projects with a view to responding to the challenges of the occurrence of extreme climatic phenomena. The Minister of Culture, Tourism and Environment says that there is an urgent need for action at a global level, challenging countries to present determined national contributions that should serve as a strategy for medium and long-term development aimed at reducing emissions. The seminar on the digital ecological transition and climate diplomacy was attended by the UK Ambassador to Angola, Jessica Hand, Italian Ambassador Cristiano Gallo, and national and foreign experts.
In our next story, report exposes poverty in Malawi. The government on Wednesday launched the 2020 Malawi Poverty Report, which has revealed that over half of the population of Malawi lives in poverty. Produced by the National Statistical Office, the report shows that in 2016 to 2017, the national proportion of the population that was poor declined from 51.5% to 50.7% in 2019 to 2020. According to the report, in 2020, Central Region had the highest proportion of people that were poor, followed by the Southern Region and Northern Region in that order. The Central Region is also exposed as where poverty was deeper as compared to the southern and northern regions. In terms of ultra poverty gaps and squared poverty gaps in the indices, the Central Region is topping the list, meaning that ultra poverty was the highest. Launching the report, Vice President Saulos Chilima said the document was not glorifying poverty, but was a launchpad rather for many development programs that the Tons Alliance-led administration had lined up.
All right, now in the last of our top stories, Lake Tanganyika's rising water levels displace 100,000 people. Natural disasters have forced more than 100,000 people to flee their homes in Burundi in recent years, Save the Children has said. Most of them had lived on the shores of Lake Tanganyika, where water levels had risen because of heavy storms, causing floods and landslides. People described waking up at night to find their homes and farms swallowed by the lake, the world's second deepest. Many factors contribute to flooding, but a warming atmosphere caused by climate change makes extreme rainfall more likely. Nearly 85% of the 122,500 people living in camps in Burundi have been displaced by natural disasters rather than conflict, the charity said. Children were bearing the brunt of the crisis, with about 7,200 babies under the age of 1 living in camps, it added. All right, that brings us to the end of our top stories. It's Africa Good Morning on a Friday, and we have more for you after the break. Recently, we hosted Gabriel Bernardo of Viceroy on Africa Good Morning. Viceroy Investigations has been outspoken against all exploration in the Kavango regions of Namibia and previously red-flagged irregularities at Steenkop, Wirecard and elsewhere. Yet they were recently fined by the regulator in South Africa. Frank Steffen spoke to Fraser Perring of Viceroy earlier this week. Have a look.
Right, on the line, we've got Fraser Perring. Fraser Perring might not be known to all of you, but those who read the Allgemeine Zeitung will certainly know him by now. He is the person who started off with Viceroy Research. Viceroy Research being one of these short sellers that concentrate on those companies who don't seem to be getting it right and who often trade without true intentions. So some of you might remember that we had Gabriel Bernard on the line previously on this show, and he gave us some indication about what's going on as regards to the investments in the oil exploration up in the Kavango regions. So this time Gabe couldn't be with us, and I was able to get hold of Fraser Perring. Fraser, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. So let's get to the point quickly. Fraser, the recent penalty lodged by South Africa's Financial Sector Conduct Authority, FSCA, has obviously created some hype and mixed feelings after Recon Africa has been repeatedly identified as an investor that has no honest intent and identified as such by Viceroy Research. So Viceroy and three partners, in other words, you and Aidan Lau and Gabriel Bernard, were slapped with a 50 million administrative penalty for supposedly publishing false, misleading or deceptive statements about Capitec Bank in South Africa in 2018. And that caused its share price to drop by 23%. Can you give us a quick and understandable review of what happened and why you're likely to fight this penalty?
First of all, they slapped us with a judgment without informing us when the tribunal was taking place. They sent us some information, but most people that are within our legal team that have looked at the information are confused by their selective nature. Basically, our opinion is they're prosecuting us or not prosecuting. They've attempted to fine us. They haven't prosecuted us. For specifically our opinion. And it's interesting that the FSCA made a legal faux pas when he said we didn't correct our reports with the alternate facts and the alternate truth. We'll be using that as part of our defense because legally he knows the implications, we know the implications, and it's absurd that anyone with a legal opinion, it's in essence, my view is it's to stymie any potential critic of a company. Please note that they haven't investigated Capitec. They didn't summons Capitec. And I won't go into the finesses of the case by case allegations, but the first one that they allege is the SEC had to drag us kicking and screaming. They had all the same information, and they did absolutely nothing with it. They investigated, decided that it was our opinion, it stood up, and they discharged any form of investigation. We have the letter for that. We can provide it, of course, to yourselves. And importantly, the FSCA seems to now be the attack dog for Capitec.
Yeah, and this is really a bit surprising because I remember that when I spoke to Gabriel in an attempt to get hold of Viceroy, he actually said that Viceroy had at any and all time tried to submit all the information that they needed, basically saying that Viceroy was quite happy to open up their books and have them look at it.
Well, we provided all the data. Capitec seemed to be very selective with the data they provided. They instructed, and please note, they instructed for an internal audit by PwC, who had been their auditor, I think it's for 19 years now, I might be wrong, but it's a damn long time. And of course, after saying they never rescheduled delinquent loans, all of a sudden there's snippets of it in there, but we aren't provided with the details. The FSCA have factually refused our request for all the information. You cannot make this up.
Yeah, and this is really where the whole argument becomes a bit interesting because maybe you can correct me, but do I understand you and interpret the whole trading on the stock market correctly when I say that any statement made by any analyst for that matter will at the end of the day be the subject of an objective view taken by either you or whichever analyst we're looking at, which will by its very nature have to result in a subjective appraisal, as it really depends on your point of view and on the individual human investor, how he sees a specific stock as well as the business trading that specific stock.
Right. So first of all, we believe all analysts should be able to have a free opinion. Factually, they should be able to have an opinion to the extent where if it's justified in their view, and they can take that opinion and they can use it with their clients or anything. But amazingly, And this is the correlation, right? So what they're saying is we didn't correct our report after the company, specifically after the company made a rebuttal denying the allegations we'd made. One of them, the FSCA takes issue with our opinion that Capitec is a loan shark, right? I don't know if you know the history of Capitec, but in my view to this day, they're still on the echelons of the higher echelons of unsecured lending stroke being a loan shark, in my view. And they've outperformed all their peers. And the argument could be, and we put this to them at the time, that it could be because they're taking deposits, but basically their defaults do not add up compared to all their peers. And so for us, if an analyst wishes to have a view that Capitec is the world's best bank at lending, then I would laugh at them, but they're entitled to their view. But if this is the case, and we've been treated equally and fairly and objectively, just have a think for the comparison. So they're saying that our views were so abhorrent and misleading that we should be fined this, not prosecuted, fined. And we shouldn't be invited to the tribunal, and we should only be given any information they seem to support their view, not all the information. But ignoring that, just have a think. If this was fair, can you show me where the prosecutions are for Steinhoff? I don't think they should happen, but I don't think ours is legally entitled to happen either, in terms of sanctions, fines, prosecutions, whatever you want to call it. Not one of the analysts has gone back and recorrected all the reports that they put out that were buy on Steinhoff. Their figures were grossly inaccurate. And if this is the way it's going to be, the FSCA, and they know this now, have an extreme fight on their hands. The SEC saw through their charade. They were protecting a bank, in my view. I haven't had dialogue with the SEC, although we filed a complaint for misleading statements by the FSCA, saying they agreed with them and clearly endorsed the enforcement action against us. They didn't. They actually stopped investigating because there was nothing to see. So now, you'll see it in the news shortly, we're intending to not only defend ourselves, but take action against the Commissioner and the FSCA. And they're going to have to hand over every single email and communication, and I'm using that in inverted commas, with any Capitec Pro supporter about how they came about this. I'm not tolerating it. And if people don't know our background, they will know that I have been through this with Wirecard, MyMedex, ProSieben, you name it. And every single time we have won. And this time, I'm not stopping there. I want people indicted for persecuting market participants of their view. They are blatantly breaching my rights in the US as a US entity to freedom of speech. Let's see how it works with them. But one thing for sure, the FSCA has it coming from Viceroy, and their statements that they've made that we recorded when they were giving live commentary is unfortunately going to come back to haunt them. They, in my view, already owe me damages, and I'm not only going to have damages, I'm going to make sure they're fired. They're unemployable. They are literally scapegoating me because the darling Capitec, the most expensive bank in the world that does unsecured lending, is being protected by the FSCA. They're going to have to prove that they didn't protect it.
Well, I had another question, but you've basically answered it already. I mean, at the end of the day, it is really up to the individual investor to decide whether they put their trust in Viceroy or Capitec. Now, I know where I would put my trust, simply because I've read and studied a bit of what you did so far. So having said that, and having seen how you go about making sure that you keep record of every little discussion you have, of every mail you send, and so on. And I'm now talking of my experience in terms of following what you're doing for Recon Africa. Where's for you the biggest difference between Capitec and Recon Africa?
They're both. There is no way in the world the valuations stack up on either of them. Both, we made similarities between past associations with dodgy companies on both. We made similar comparisons in terms of being entirely overvalued. We made similar associations in how they justify the value of the company. And I won't go into it piece by piece, but we call it archetypes of fraud, dodgy practices, or highly questionable results and revenues. And you get the same with Recon. They're using the terms indication shows. With Capitec, it was, we didn't reschedule loans that were in arrears. We consolidated them after a period of time. And there's a number of contradictory items to both companies. But now Recon Africa is in play. We're already up, I think, 55% on Recon Africa. I lost money on Capitec here and there, made money, lost money. But now I'm in play again on Capitec because they brought it back to me. And this time, we're going to publish all those internal emails between PwC, Capitec, and the FSCA, so that they know that the investors should be entitled to this information. Capitec was the only bank in South Africa, remember this, for the first, I think, 18 years to only have one auditor that cost 250,000, I think, from memory, to audit. Every other bank was multiples of that. And you could say, Fraser, well, they only do one type of product, so it should be cheaper. But one of my independent companies that isn't listed or anything, it costs more to audit than what Capitec did, right? And I don't allegedly have the same profit that Capitec did. It doesn't stack up. And at the time that we published the report, we believed all the information we published, and now the FSCA are saying we didn't believe it, when in reality we still believe it. And this time, the beauty of the action they're bringing, and this is important for all investors, when these actions are brought, particularly someone like me, I'm willing to admit I'm wrong, because I'm not going to spend, well, say $1 million defending this case when I can pay 2.5 for it to go away if I was guilty. I'm going to spend 2.5 pulling them apart to the point where everyone knows the collusive practices that the FSCA have done. They've protected a market darling that is outperformed everyone. And if our information is correct in our assessment, they actually have less defaults in money terms than American Express platinum bondholders, which is absurd. So let's wait and see. But one thing for sure, the FSCA should have let this go away. The share price said we were wrong. But now we're forced to actually come back into South Africa to defend ourselves. I'm not just defending, I am publishing every single piece of information I get that shows that the FSCA is negligent in trying to silence critics of a market darling.
Well, thank you very much for giving us that update and making the time, Fraser. Good luck with your endeavors there, and thank you for clearing this up, because I'm quite sure some of our viewers will be extremely interested to hear your opinion. So thank you very much. And
well, they should definitely follow you on it. They should definitely follow you on it.
Okay, thanks, and we see each other. Bye.
Yeah.
On the 2nd of July 2010, the United Nations General Assembly unanimously voted to create a single UN body tasked with accelerating progress in achieving gender equality and women empowerment. The new UN entity for gender equality and the empowerment of women, or UN Women, merged 4 of the world's bodies, agencies, and offices, which are the UN Development Fund for Women, the Division for the Advancement of Women, the Office of the Special Advisor on Gender Issues, and the UN International Research and Training Institute for the Advancement of Women. And here is more on that.
Equal rights have never come easy. Whether it's girls' access to education, women's place in leadership, or women's and girls' freedom and choice over their own bodies, progress for women's rights has always been a hard-won battle. But 10 years ago, UN member states took a historic step on the path towards gender equality by enlisting some crucial allies: us.
By bringing together 4 parts of the UN systems dedicated to women's issues, it will now be much more difficult for the world to ignore the challenges facing women and girls or to fail to take the necessary action.
As UN Women, we hit the ground running. Together with civil society, governments, the private sector, and in coordination with our sister agencies in the UN system, we have worked tirelessly to place women's rights, priorities, and voices on critical global agendas. Our staff in more than 90 countries have delivered programs to transform lives on the ground. We have worked with governments to change laws and set standards to meet women's needs. We have teamed up with influential and intergenerational partners to spread our message. We have engaged men and boys to create a united force for gender equality. And thanks to our work with governments and numerous partners over the last decade, we have seen true progress. More than 2 billion women benefit from better national policies to fully participate in the economy. More than 1.5 billion women and girls enjoy enhanced legal protections and higher quality services to address gender-based violence. More than 25 countries have reformed their constitutions in support of women's political participation.
We need big, bold steps, not incremental steps.
As COVID-19 exposes the massive fault lines of global inequality, as climate and humanitarian emergencies threaten the most vulnerable, as movements for racial justice demand an end to systemic discrimination, and as innovation and technology shape our future societies, today, a decade after our establishment, UN Women's work is more important than ever. Women and girls need an ally and a champion to take on the unfinished business of gender equality. Equal rights have never come easy, but we've been standing alongside women and girls in this fight for 10 years, and we're ready for the next 10.
Putting women first is putting the world first. Next up, let's have a look at what the day is going to look like on our weather forecast. Welcome back to Africa. Good morning. It's time for us to get straight into your economic news stories. In our first story, U.S. investors attracted by ongoing changes. Americans are excited about bringing investments to Angola and recognize the attractiveness of the current private investment law, which has eliminated the obligation to share positions in companies between nationals and foreigners, in addition to granting benefits and exemptions to tax. The statement was made yesterday by the Minister Counselor of the Embassy of the United States of America, Greg Segas. Greg Segas made it known that the U.S. Embassy is ready to support investors and facilitate the attraction of national investment among its class of entrepreneurs. The privatization program started in 2019 and runs until the end of 2022. It envisages privatizing 195 state assets and shares, giving rise to greater weight in the business market to private individuals and removing the business function from the state. So far, it is estimated that 41 assets have already been privatized between 2019 and 2021.
320 businesses plan layoffs. Despite measures to mitigate job losses during the state of emergency, the Ministry of Employment, Labor, Productivity and Skill Development has received 320 retrenchments notification from different businesses, leading to 204 workers being axed between April 2020 and July 2021. Giving an update on his ministry SOE exit plans on Friday, Labour Minister Paul Balobi said the 320 businesses that notified the Commissioner of Labour about their plans to retrench 20 were exceeded too. He said the retrenchments came as a result of businesses struggling to keep their normal operations going due to the restriction adopted by the government to curb the spread of COVID-19. Balobi explained that some of the companies that submitted applications to retrench eventually went back against their plans following decisions with authorities. He bemoaned that some companies went ahead and dismissed workers without following the right processes. Balobi also said they will set up a committee responsible for monitoring that the agreed guidelines on the Botswana Decent Work Country program are followed.
Now in Malawi, further delays for free electricity connection. Malawians would have to wait a little longer for free electricity connections, which the Tonse Alliance promised as the Electricity Supply Corporation of Malawi awaits funding. This is because there is no allocation for this venture in the 2020-2021 national budget. During the campaign trail to 2020 fresh presidential election, which saw Tonse Alliance being ushered into power, the alliance promised that Malawians would have free electricity connection. Speaking recently at an interface with journalists, ESCOM Senior Manager for Commercial and Customer Services, Wiseman Kabwazi, said the corporation was yet to receive funding from the government for this. An energy expert from Muzuzu University, Maxon Chitawo, doubts the possibility of free electricity connections. He instead recommended subsidizing the electricity connection fee, but with a strong financial backup to iron out delays in connections by the electricity distributor. Treasury spokesperson Williams Banda said the government has a mechanism for sustainable financing of applications eligible for free connections, but could not divulge details.
Sasol improves 2030 emission cut target, set net zero ambition. Sasol Ltd, South Africa's second biggest producer of greenhouse gases, set a target of cutting its emission of climate warming pollutants by 30% by 2030, and it said it aims to have a net zero emission by 2050. The target, announced on Wednesday, is an improvement on a previous aim of reducing emission by 10% by 2030 and comes as South Africa and its most polluting companies under increasing pressure to transition away from coal. Sasol produces about a fifth of South Africa's greenhouse gases today, but plans to gradually move away from using coal to produce chemicals and motor fuels, shifting to natural gas instead. Beyond 2030, it intends to use green hydrogen and sustainable carbon. The company is also tendering for the supply of 1,200 megawatts megawatts of renewable energy over the next 9 years to run its operation rather than relying on coal-generated electricity from state utility Eskom Holding SOC Ltd.
Staying with South Africa, ABSA plans 9.6 billion rand deal to increase black ownership. ABSA is considering a new black economic empowerment plan that could constitute as much as 8% of South Africa's third largest lender, worth about 9.6 billion rand at current prices. The program is likely to be inclusive of both external investors and staff. ABSA had looked at setting up a new program following the exit of former shareholder Barclays, but put the matter on hold when the coronavirus pandemic started to roil markets 18 months ago. The shares rose 1.4% in early trade in Johannesburg, extending gains for the year to 19% and valuing the bank at 121 billion rand. The staff component will enable all ABSA employees across the group's operations to become shareholders and to participate in the group's growth, it said. In 2004, ABSA became the first of the large banks in South Africa to conclude a significant BBEE transaction, issuing a 10% stake at Bato Bonke Capital. Interesting. Everyone's putting their shares out there. MTC in Namibia is doing the same thing. Grab those shares. This is Africa Good Morning. Before you grab those shares, check out what they're worth on our economic indicators. Up next.
Good morning. Right now we are going to cross over to Mzansi where Ari Hohad has the sports news. Good morning, Ari, and please take it away.
So nice to have a Friday leading up to a sporting weekend in South Africa. It's a Heritage Day today and also Braai Day. So that's a nice bonus day for South Africans, Southern Africans. But globally in the sport, lots happening. Firstly, some golf news. It is the Ryder Cup the 43rd playing of the Ryder Cup golf tournament. That is Europe that play against the United States. It's a team tournament, and normally golf is individual, and if you hit the ball into the water, it's your own undoing. But now they're playing in teams. Lots of pressure on this. The last 12 tournaments, Europe won 9 of them. They're the defending champions. They won the last tournament in France. Now they're playing at Lake Wisconsin at Whistling Straits in the USA. It looks like an Irish golf course. It's ironically, it's an Irish design golf course in the United States. So the Ryder Cup starts today. The opening ceremony was last night, and it is today. There will be the teams, 2 players playing together, and on Sunday it will finish with the singles, and that's the 2 captains, Padraig Harrington and Steve Stricker. That's the cup that they will be playing for. So today the single or the pairings start. The interesting pairing today for those that follow the golf, Justin Thomas and Jordan Spieth. They're going to play in one team for the USA, and they're going to play against John Rahm and Sergio Garcia. So that starts today and finishes on Sunday. On to some rugby news. Also, lots of rugby starting all of a sudden. It's international rugby is firstly the focus. It is the All Blacks that play the Springboks tomorrow. It's quite significant. A significant test. It's the 100th test between the 2 nations. It goes back to 1921. 13 August 1921 was the first game. The All Blacks won that one by 13 points to 6. And the 50th game was won by South Africa, and tomorrow it is game number 100. It's going to be played at a neutral field. It's played in Queensland in Australia because of COVID-19. And that's not the only rugby championship game tomorrow. It is also Australia that will play Argentina. So kick-off tomorrow morning for the All Black Springbok game will be 9 a.m. Southern African time, and 12 o'clock Australia play Argentina. And then quickly also, it is the United Rugby Championship that also starts with South African franchises that play in Europe. It is the Lions that play Zebra today, and then also the Sharks play Munster. The Stormers play Benetton, and the Bulls play against Leinster. Tough games for them. And then soccer news, it is the English Premiership that continue this weekend. Some really strong matchups in store for us this weekend. Leading at the moment, one of the 3 teams is Chelsea. They are on 13 points after 5 games, and they've got a tough home game against Manchester City. That's the 2 teams, Chelsea and Man City. They will play tomorrow the first game, and Man City, they've got 10 points after 5 games, defending champions. And then also on 13 points after 5 games, the other 2 leading teams, Manchester United, they're playing at home against Aston Villa. And then Liverpool, they have to travel to Brentford for their game in the Premier League. And on Sunday, a big game for you also, Ashwin. It is Arsenal that's hosting Tottenham Hotspur, so a big game for both those elite clubs. On to some Formula One racing news. It is Russian Grand Prix again. There was lots of action the last time in the Italian Grand Prix. Obviously, there was an accident with Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton that came together in Italian Grand Prix. That's a lovely setting at the Russian Grand Prix. Qualifying will start today, and the main qualifying is tomorrow. And very tight at the top for Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton. At the moment, it is Max Verstappen on 226.5 points, leading, and Lewis Hamilton just a few points behind him, 221.5 points. So it's Lewis Hamilton that won the previous races there. There he is with President Putin in Russia, so maybe that's going to be the same for him again, but very competitive at the moment between Mercedes and Red Bull Racing, powered by Honda. Let's finish with some cricket news. There's IPL happening at the moment. The continuation of the IPL is happening in the United Arab Emirates. Quite a few games that's going to be played over the weekend. Yesterday, it was the Kolkata Knight Riders that beat the Mumbai Indians by 7 wickets. Quinton de Kock did well for the losing team for 55 runs or 42 balls. And then other South Africans doing well is Andrich Nortje and Kagiso Rabada. They're doing well for the Delhi Capitals. And so lots of games over the weekend, Saturday and Sunday in the IPL. And then in women's cricket, there's 2 very strong matchups taking place at the moment. It's Australia that is hosting India at the moment, the women's 50-over games. And they already started their game this morning. It is India that's batting first. They were 25 without loss after 6 overs a while ago. And then that is New Zealand playing against England. They will also play on Sunday, England, that play against New Zealand. That game is in St. Lawrence in Canterbury in England. So lots of sports happening. Hope that your team does well for the weekend. Have a great sporting weekend, and we'll talk on Monday with all the results. Goodbye.
Looking forward to Monday indeed, Ari. Thank you for bringing us the world sport updates. This is Still Africa. Good morning. After the break, your headlines. All right, as promised, here are the headlines from today's top stories. Algeria announces closure of airspace to Morocco. FNB dumps clients linked to fish rot. Game changer, China to stop funding overseas coal projects. South Kivu ex-rebel Chance Mihonya sentenced to life for crimes against humanity. US investor attracted by ongoing changes. And in the sporting world, golf, it's the Ryder Cup this weekend. Those have been our stories.
Thank you very much for joining us on the Friday edition of Africa Good Morning. We'll be back again next week, same time, same place. Please do not forget to wear your mask, get vaccinated, and avoid unnecessary gatherings. We are still very much in the middle of a pandemic. And on that note, it's all our love and all our light.
Make sure you check out oneup2.com, and we'll see you on Monday. Siraja Kanaka.